Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening, and good evening to those who may be watching us online. So excited to be able to be here for our last session for our financial empowerment series about where do we stand as far as refinance, things of that nature. But she has been working in this industry for a long time, and so I wanted to make sure that we brought her on so that way she could have that conversation. And so let us go ahead and open up at a word of prayer, and so we can bring her up. Let us go to God. Dear Heavenly Father God, we say thank you on tonight. We say thank you for what you have done, God, throughout this series. God, we thank you for what is going to be presented on tonight for those who are in the building as well as those online. God, help us to gain clarity in the area as it regards to our finance. God, we thank you for all of the presenters that have given us clarity when it comes to finances, helping us to understand budgeting, helping us to understand the psychology of finance, helping us to understand retirement and investments. And God, help us tonight to be able to understand that which it relates to home buying. So right now, God, we just say thank you. Thank you for being a God who not only cares for our souls, but you also care for us even while we're down here on this side of the Jordan. God, because I believe in your word, it declares that you want us to have life and have it abundantly. And that doesn't apply only for the sweet by and by, but it also applies while we live in this world. So God, for that, we say thank you. It's in your son's name we pray and give thanks. Amen.
Hello, everyone. All right, so this is what we're going to do. Just because there's a small group of us, we're going to do a little different. So, first, I want to just ask so I know who my audience is because I got two things to talk about. So, who in here already owns a home or at some point had owned a home? All right, cool. Now, the first thing we'll start with is we'll do the I'm going to buy a home first, and then we'll do I already own my home. What options I got in this kind of climate? We'll do that last, okay? First, I'm going to share a little story because I always like to tell people, I always feel like people, the home buying process is so large that people get overwhelmed with it. So I always like to start off just with my journey of my home buying process because I want everybody to know it's not as hard as it may seem. Even in this economical climate, I don't care what they say. Because remember, it was probably, I want to say, 1989, 1990, 1991, where, can anybody guess what the interest rate for buying a home was? Just take a guess. How much? No. 14. So we've been here before. We've been here before. Real estate is cyclical. It's always going to go up and down. It's always going to change from a buyer's market to a seller's market, back to a buyer's market, and back and forth. So here's how I started my journey. I lived, I would say, for the better part of my life, I lived in Section 8 housing. My grandmother lived in Section 8 housing. My mom, she was a little different. She didn't. She went off on her own and didn't do that. But when it skipped down to me, it was me and a couple of my aunts that lived in Section 8 housing. And it's kind of like I look at people, I look at parents in our community, parents that live in the projects and parents that live in Section 8 housing. For girls, it's almost as crazy as it might sound, right? It's almost like a rite of passage. When you get to a certain age, especially if you have a baby, the parents are like, now girl, this is how you go down and get your Section 8 housing. So that was my grandmother's mentality for that part, because you only know what you experience. And she never owned a home before, so how would she know? So one day I was at work and I listened to this lady. I listened to this lady say, all these things about the home buying process, because what she was explaining was she was explaining it to about her daughter, how she was telling her to buy a house, right? So at the time, I'm like, I could do that. My mother is very independent. My mother would never be the one to say, like, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. Funny enough, I went home and I called my mom one day and I said, Mom, I'm going to buy a house. And the first thing she said out of her mouth, I couldn't believe it. She's like, girl, you can't buy a house, you don't have a husband. I never expected my mom to say that. So I went to work the next day and I seen this guy that I work with. And I said, you know what my mom said? My mom said I couldn't buy a house because I don't have a husband. He said, let me tell you different. I'm going to tell you what to do. Go buy a house and get a AHS home warranty. And when something breaks in the house, you pay a $75 deductible and they come and fix it. There's your husband. And I was like, oh, okay. So now I'm on this journey. So back then you figure it was, I'll tell you, it was 2006. So 2006, I sat down at my job and I said, I probably made about $12 an hour. I sat there and I said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get another job. And then I'm going to get another job. And I'm going to buy a house so my daughter knows what it means to own a house. So I said, I'm going to give myself 6 months. So what I did from start to finish, I went to I didn't know you could do it yourself back then, right? So I went to a credit repair place, Neighborhood Legal Housing Services. It was started by a black woman in 1969 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I went, and not only did, when you go to us, right, we're always going to show you how to do it. That's the best thing. The lady not only wrote my dispute letters for me, but she showed me how to do it. So I didn't have a lot of bad credit, but I didn't have no credit. And a couple things I had was like kind of bad. So what she did, she showed me how to do it. So for 3 months, I just sat there at work every day, don't tell my job, and worked on my credit. So once I worked on my credit, after the 3 months, I said, okay, I know what I'm going to do. There was nowhere to eat for us. We always had to go off campus to go get lunch and breakfast. So I went to Sam's Club, and I bought the Danishes, the muffins, the cookies, and the juice. And I sat at my desk and sold it. And I had a big jar that said house fund. And I worked in a customer call center for a hospital. So then I would work from 6 to 2. When I got off at 2, I would go drive this thing called Classy Cab. It was the cabs that this man started where they don't go to people's house to pick them up. They stay in the downtown area. So you get all like the football players, the stars, the people going to the theater, and you just do little quick trips. And they tip really good. So I would do that from the afternoon till about 12 at night. And then I would come home and start all over again. So 3-4 months of that, and I saved everything. I looked at my finances and I said, what do I buy a lot of? Shoes. So I said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm only going to go out to, and I eat. I go out to eat a lot. So I was like, I'm only going to go out to eat when somebody else is paying, the family. And then I'm going to stop buying shoes. Because buying shoes ain't going to get me the house. So that's what I did. And I am disciplined. I will say that for the most part. So I did that, and I start saving everything. The first key to saving your money for a house is seeing it. Debit card ruins it, right? Because what do? You just swipe the card. But if you write it down, so nobody keeps a check ledger anymore, right? Because we don't do that. So I took a check ledger, an old one, and every time I spent anything, I wrote it down. I would be in the store writing it down like this. Oh, I spent da-da-da-da-da. So that's how I started on the saving part of it. And I saved and I saved. Every tip, every paycheck, I saved it outside of paying my bills. And then once I was ready, because I knew I had to have a couple things. I was scared of that closing cost, that down payment, because I didn't know what to expect. And I just was like, all I can do is save money. So I saved all the money. Now, I was sitting at my aunt's house one day. And by this point, nobody in my family ever owned a house. My aunt married a gentleman, and he already owned the house they lived in. So I don't have nobody for reference, right? I don't have nobody to ask. So I was sitting there thinking, now what's the next step? I guess go get a realtor. I went out, got a realtor. And she said, when I signed up with her, she said, you got to get a pre-approval. So I'm like, well, what's that? She was like, hold on. She said, you have to go to the bank and you have to turn in your pay stubs and show them your finances so they can pre-approve you for an amount to buy a house. All right, cool, I got it. I went to PNC Bank. I gave them the stuff. I got a pre-approval. Now, this was back in 2006, mind you. My pre-approval was for $125,000. And, child, I thought I was rich. I was like, I could buy a house for $125,000. And the market's different in Pittsburgh. The market's kind of flat. It's not like Charlotte. So, at that point, I had my pre-approval letter in my hand. I'm ready to go, right? So I went to the lady and I said, I didn't know much about buying a house, but I do know math. And I didn't want to be house poor. So I went to the lady, the realtor, her name was Lori. I said, Lori, I got a pre-approval for $125,000 and I want a house for $50,000. That lady looked and said, oh, okay, here we go. She starts taking me to houses. Not only is she taking me to houses that wasn't $50,000, she was taking me houses to $125.99 exactly. So I was like, dang. So I gave her a chance. I told her once. I told her twice. The second time I called the realty office and I said, how do I fire my real estate agent? I said, because she's taking me to houses and, I can't afford them. I'm a single mom here. So the broker said, you just write a letter. It's only going to be one sentence. I don't want this person to be my realtor anymore. He was like, the way you do it is you have to certify it. And that's it. So that's what I did. I sent that certified letter. I looked up Caldwell Banker, and I said, I got her. I'm going to go to school for real estate. Because I'm not going to let nobody talk over my head. She was throwing those real estate terms around, and I work at the hospital and didn't know none of that stuff, and she started saying FHA and PFHA. I was like, what's that? Now, I don't want to seem like she's dumb. So I just was acting like I knew. I was embarrassed to say I didn't know. So then I told my mom, I said, I'm going to go to real estate school. I'm not going to be a realtor, but I'm going to get educated for the next time when I go to buy a house. I called the gentleman up. I started school all through the whole 4 months of school. I was the only one out of 30 people saying, well, I'm not going to be a realtor. I'm just doing this to buy a house. And he was like, you're going to be a realtor because you have the personality for it. And it's a lot of hard work to get through the schooling. So you are. I was like, no, I'm not. I got a job. I'm going to buy this house though. So after that, that was it. I went through everything. I didn't take the test. I just got the education about it so I could do it. That was a year to the day, September of 2007, I closed on my house. And I did buy a house for $50,000 because I bought a repo. Somebody got a foreclosed house. And I did find one, and it was nice. It was 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom, a full finished basement, and a whole half an acre of backyard. So I bought the house not knowing too much, but I learned as I went, because once I got rid of that realtor, at that point, I could have did my own transaction, but I was smarter than that. Somebody would have got over on me because I was new in the game. I wouldn't have knew what to do. So I got a realtor, and she was a retired nurse and an Avon lady. She sell Avon, right? And she became a realtor. Nicest lady you ever want to meet. And she walked me through the whole process and taught me how to save the money and do everything. And I closed on my house, and I was just like, wow. And now that same house, because I lived in that house from 2007 to 2015 when I moved to Charlotte. And that house pays a lot for me here because now I'm a landlord and I just charge rent. And I got a second property after that too. So I got two properties in Pittsburgh that I was blessed enough to get good people in them though. It's hard being a landlord, right? Yeah, so I was blessed enough to get long-term older people in the house, and that's how I do it. And I got one of my aunts is a property manager, so she manages my properties up there. So that's how I did it. And when I say it was that easy, when you think about how God sets it up for you, he set every step of the way up for me before I got there. And then when I would get to that step, I would be like, oh, thank God, because I was really worrying about that part, but he did it. So when you say, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to buy a house, the main thing I tell my clients in the beginning is this: 3 pots of money. You got to have it. Because most people get an FHA versus a private one, a private lending loan, right? So I'm going to tell you the difference. A FHA is just a government-backed loan. So when the government backs the loan, the bank feels really good about lending you the money. Now, the downfall to that is they're a little strict when it comes to passing the house for inspection and appraisal and all those things. So if I had to outline what you need to do from the first step all the way down, this is what I would say to anybody. Make sure your credit score is this. This is the 3 things you need. Your median credit score needs to be 580. You can have one lower, but you shouldn't. And you can have one higher. But as long as that middle one is 580, you qualify for a FHA loan and you can put 3% down. If you're going for a conventional loan, not government backed, then your credit score should be 620 and you're going to put 20% down. And when I say a conventional loan is just a loan if you just go right to PNC Bank or Wells Fargo and say, this is the loan product that I want. That's the only difference. And they're not as strict as on the inspection or the appraisal part. And I'm going to give you a handout with everything I'm saying right now so you can have it too. So now, when you think about the things that you have to pay up front, when you're going to buy a house, because you're going to get the pre-approval, the pre-approval is going to be good for 90 days. They're going to basically tell you, just judging by what you're telling me up front that you make at your job, I'm going to pre-approve you for this amount. The newest thing that we do now in this new economy to protect ourselves is to tell them also, instead of giving me a pre-approval, why don't you just ask me for all my paperwork, all my taxes, everything I got, so you can give me a mortgage commitment now, up front, so the process is easier. So once you get the pre-approval, you got 90 days to find a house before you have to get a new pre-approval. The most important part, everybody thinks the most important part is the happy part, going to look for the house, right? That's not. You're going to have to pay for the inspection. And right now, an inspection is running about $475. So that's one thing you pay for. The second thing you're going to pay for is the appraisal. And the appraisal is about $390 to $400. So let me explain an appraisal. I have a house for sale, and I list my house at $400,000. Miss Eva come along and say, I want to buy her house. When the appraisal comes in, it comes in at $380,000. Miss Eva can't buy my house because the loan product, the FHA loan product, is only going to give $380 what the appraisal is. That means I listed my house for more than it's worth in the bank's eyes or the appraiser's eyes, because the appraiser is just an opinion. So this is the bad thing. The $380,000 appraisal, I can't just say, oh, well, I'm just going to go sell my house to somebody else, because it sticks on there for 6 months. So it would be in my best interest to go ahead and lower my price so Miss Eva could go ahead and buy that house for $380, because I'm just going to be sitting with that house, because that appraisal is going to stick for 6 months to whoever comes along to buy it. That's the first thing. That's why an appraisal is so important. That's why when you own a house, on the flip side of things, you want to get an appraisal yourself and pay for it, so you know what to list your house at. So now you got the appraisal and you got the inspection to pay for. Those are the only two things that you're going to pay for up front. The earnest money, the due diligence money. So in North Carolina, each state is different. In Pennsylvania, we only have earnest money. So in North Carolina has due diligence and earnest. I'll tell you the difference. Miss Eva says she want to buy my house. I said I'm going to sell it to her for $380. She wants to make me know that she's serious about the deal. So she's going to give me $1,000 earnest money, and she's going to give me $1,000 due diligence money. Both of those monies she's going to get back at the end at closing, but right now they're mine. So that $1,000 that she gives me for due diligence, that buys her time. That buys her whatever amount of time me and her agree on to get the inspection and do all the things that she needs done. In that due diligence period, Miss Eva gets an inspection. The inspector said, oh, the roof is terrible. She comes to me and say, what you going to do, Jody? You going to fix the roof? You lived in the house for 20 years. We can't agree on that. So I say, nope, I'm not fixing the roof. At that point, Miss Eva say, I'm out of here. I'm not going to buy your house. That $1,000 due diligence fee, that's mine. I keep that. But that $1,000 earnest money, I got to give that back to Miss Eva. So anything that has the word fee attached to it, you never get that back. Fee just means non-refundable. That's all that means. So I give her the $1,000 back, but that other $1,000, no. And that inspection and that appraisal money that she done put out, that's gone. That's it. It's over. Now, let's just say she comes to me and say, fix the roof or give me some money toward the roof. And I agree. Now we can go on with the process. And once we get to closing, $2,000, $1,000 earnest and $1,000 due diligence, that's going to be credited back to Miss Eva toward her closing amount. So now we got earnest money, due diligence money, inspection money, and appraisal money. Those are the 4 things that she's going to pay out of pocket. Everything else is at the closing table. When we get to the closing table, a closing cost is assessed as follows. For every $10,000 the house costs, you're going to pay $1,000. So that, and plus the bank fees, the admin fees, and all those things that pastor bank charge, y'all. All them made up fees that don't nobody know what they mean. So when you look at in terms of the first thing that you want to do always is credit. While you're working on your credit to get that median score up to 580, you want to be saving those pots of money so you just have that money readily available, because nobody's going to wait for those fees to be paid. So once you get to the point where you decide, I'm going to buy a house, the credit and the saving of money, that's the only thing you got to worry about. Looking at the house, there's a ton of them. That's the easy part. And then you got to be preparing all along for your actual money at closing. Let's talk about closing. In the state of North Carolina, if you make $150,000 a year or less, you can get up to $15,000 towards your closing costs that you don't have to pay back. If you live in whatever county you live in, Cabarrus, Iredell, Mecklenburg, there's a such thing called bond money. If there's bond, it's on a first come first served basis. It gets eaten up quick, but sometimes you can get it depending what type of year. So now Miss Eva she's waiting for, she wants this bond money, right? So the realtor and the mortgage person, they do all the work. You don't have to do any of this. So they're going to say, oh, the county that you live in has some bond money. So the county has $1,000 to give you towards your closing costs on one condition. You have to live in that house for 3 years or 5 years. It has to be your primary residence for either 3 years or 5 years, just depending on what county you live in. Regardless of any kind of loan. Yeah. So let's pause there because that's a lot. So tell me some questions you got about that part. You won't be able to get an FHA loan at all. You'll have to go conventional, and then the interest rate is different. Because with an FHA, it has to be your primary home. Right, because you got a secondary home. Uh-huh. So when you look at, what I always tell people is, for your first house, you should always go FHA all the time, because the FHA is going to so protect you, because it's going to protect Miss Eva, because the inspection guidelines are going to be really strict. So she's not going to get a house that somebody then just it's all messed up. The wiring, the electrical, those are the things. The roof, the appliances that you're leaving, and the wiring, that's all covered under that inspection, and they're really strict about it. So it tends to protect you, because remember, it's government backed. So that's why it's like that. Mm-hmm. That's right. Okay. Yeah, if it's like, sometimes like inspectors, they will move it. Like, especially if it's like a wash machine or something, you know what I mean? It just depends. It really, a lot of it depends on the integrity of the inspector, if you just want to know. Even with an appraiser, right? I've seen, 'cause people are lazy at their job, right? So I've seen some people, they do a drive-by appraisal, and that makes me angry. Because what happens is, when somebody does a drive-by appraisal, it's like, you just drove by, you're not looking at what's really a bedroom in there. So that's not good. Yep. Right. But you should, right? Absolutely. Right. You don't have to do anything. Absolutely.
say, well, that's not even that big a deal. Well, guess what happens now? You walk in her house, what's behind the door? You got a hole in the wall where the door opens up into the wall. Whereas with us, we have an inspector who made them put that there. Even the door behind where the AC is, who made them put insulation. But she don't have to. But for us, it's going to save us on our bill. So you're right. Even if you have to pay for it,
Just pay
you
for
got
it.
to build it, right? It's just better off, you know,
Getting
better off,
inspected.
getting that inspected.
So I just had a client not too long ago, and here it's like there's a lot of like Ryan Homes and Matney and all those places, right? So you walk into one of those houses and it's brand new. What do you need an inspection for? The reason why you need an inspection, you need your own agent. Number one, we'll use Ryan Homes. You go into Ryan Homes, there's somebody sitting at the desk. They work for Ryan Homes, right? So you go in and they're like, okay, cool. So this is the price of the home. There's no negotiating. This is the price of the home. So people tend to think, well, since there's no negotiation, I don't need a realtor. You absolutely do, because there is negotiation. Everything's negotiable. And if I'm your agent, I'm going to negotiate. If they want to make the sale, they're going to negotiate. So the things that we may not negotiate on the price, but we can negotiate on them upgrades. We can negotiate on a lot of things. We can negotiate on the timeline. If Ryan Homes is going to build a home for you, then we're going to sit down and get the numbers out in the beginning. But Ryan Homes might have a home you like that's already built. And you know what that means? They got to get rid of it. So we're going to negotiate on the price. So you need a realtor to use to fight your battle for you and keep the dates in line. So when there's an inspection or due diligence, because Miss Eva don't want to lose her money, and if you don't get the inspection and do everything in our due diligence part, you won't lose your money. So two things you need, even with new construction. You need a realtor, and you definitely need an inspection. Because as we know, people just don't do things right. They don't do their job. You don't know what's behind those walls. So you do need an inspector, because there's plenty of things that can go on just building a house. People doing cut the corners, right? They don't do this, they do that wrong. So that's why you need those two things, even with a new construction. Right. Now you got to get something in the contract. Yeah. Or they didn't build out, right? So they didn't build out the rest of the houses. So this is a thing in Charlotte. When you get a new construction and you buy the plot and the house is built on it, and then they start to build those other houses around it, then things start to kind of go like this. Or if they don't tell you, then your realtor doesn't do her due diligence, and they're going to build a shopping plaza in that other land that they decided to cut them trees down. They're going to rezone it and do it as a Walmart or something. You don't want to live behind no Walmart. So that's negligence on your realtor's part, because she didn't go down and look at the zoning and see the trajectory of what's going to be built in the next 5 or 10 years. When you buy a new construction house, this is what you always want to do. You want to keep in mind whatever that trajectory looks like for the next 10 years, and I'll give you the perfect example. People that buy houses in Harrisburg, there's a lot of trees still in Harrisburg, right? So you go to buy this new house in this neighborhood, and the neighborhood's all nice, new, and fancy, but there's all these trees out. There ain't no Starbucks or Chick-fil-A yet, right? It's coming, but it ain't there yet. Something happens and you got to sell your house. You're not going to be able to sell your house, because the big appeal of the Chick-fil-A and the Starbucks ain't there yet. So there's this girl, she bought a house 5-6 years ago. She thought that was it. That was her dream house in Harrisburg. She won't live there forever. Now she has the opportunity to move to Kenya, and she wants to go. She can't sell her house. So her house has been on the market for 1.5 years, because she lives on a street. I'll tell you what she lives on. She lives on one of the first neighborhoods built in Harrisburg, and it's really a blue-collar kind of neighborhood. And nobody wants it because her house looks older. Her house is nice inside, but the outside, the aesthetic of those houses, they're older. People want what? New and glossy and shiny. It's one of the older developments. And you got to go a ways out to get to the Chick-fil-A and Steve's Seafood and all of that stuff. So she can't sell her house. So what she's going to end up doing is what? Renting it out. She don't want to be a landlord, and she doesn't have a choice now. So if she would have looked at the trajectory with her realtor, because the realtor she had, she knew. She was a realtor very prone to that area. And she should have looked and said, they're not going to be developing this for a long time, honey. As a matter of fact, they're going to go to the other side of Harrisburg and start developing that. If she lived in her same house right now on the other side of Harrisburg, it would have been a bidding war for her house. But now she can't sell it. So that's what you want to do. What you want to do, you want your realtor, you want to interview your realtor, because everybody's a TikTok realtor. I'm sorry. So now what you have is you got a whole bunch of TikTok realtors, right? And they're on TikTok dancing and acting like they know about real estate. But when you sell real estate, it's like almost a legal dissertation. And me, myself, I got your life in my hands right now, buying a house. So I want to read all the fine print. I want to put my glasses on and read all the fine print because I don't want to get me or you in trouble. So what you want to do is you want to interview 3 realtors. So what you want to do is we're going to go back. Step 1, credit. Step 2, save the money, the 3 pots of money. And then when it's time to go out and start looking for the house, what you want to do, you want to interview 3 realtors. This is what you want to ask your realtor. Number 1, how long have you been a realtor? A realtor should be, number 1, they should be a realtor and not a real estate agent. Please know there's a difference. And the difference is when you're a real estate agent, you tend to be new and you have not gotten the National Association of Realtors behind you yet because you chose not to pay or take the extra educational courses. So that question is very poignant, right? Because you want an educated realtor. So that's the first thing. And then you want to ask the realtor themselves, tell me about your sales. And the reason, and I'm not selling a house, I'm buying one, but I want to know about your sales. And the reason why I want to know about your sales is because I want to know what your customer service etiquette is like. I want to know if the people that you sold houses to will come back to you and sell or buy another house. So once you interview the realtor and you pick the one, and it's just a conversation, right? You're just having a conversation. Once you pick the realtor, then you want to do the timeline of, I'm going to look at these houses. I'm going to give you my short and my long list. Once I give you my short and my long list, I'm going to understand that this is my first house and I'm not going to get everything. But I'm going to tell you the things that are negotiable. I might not have to have a garage because I live in Charlotte. Or I might have to have a garage because I don't like the pollen on my car. So you're going to make a list and split it down the middle, right? Long list, short list. Things I just have to have. And then things I can kind of waver on. Once you develop that list with your agent, she's going to put your criteria in and she's going to send you houses. And then you send her houses. And then you commit yourself to never looking at more than 4 houses in a day. And you go out twice a week. Because what happens is they start running together. And then it becomes stale to you. And then you can't find. And then you're seeing all these houses that you might not be able to get in because it doesn't have what your list is. But now you're kind of trying to balance it out. But you're challenging yourself because you're like, should I take that house even though like it don't have a garage? When you go to look at a house, don't ever let the cosmetic part stop you from buying a house. Who cares? Change the paint. The person selling the house should have neutralized it and went back to all white or beige anyway. But if they didn't, if they got a red room and a blue room, so what? It doesn't matter. You want to actually not look at the aesthetics of it, and you want to look at the bones of the house. The inspection is the most important thing. Once you get to that part, you're good to go. So that's buying a house. That's the whole process of buying a house. Somebody that already owns their house, you may have a 3% interest rate, 4%, 5%. What I would say is, if you have to move, then you just have to move. There's always going to be those people that have to move. But if you don't, then you just wait till the interest rate balances out and comes down to what you think. Now the Fed, I know he goes back and forth with our president, but he is going to lower the rate again. And when he lowers the rate, and the stock market can stay as stable as possible, because the housing market depends on the stock market. So if that can stay as stable as possible, then we'll probably never get to 3 again. So if you're going to sell your house and you have a 3% interest rate, go ahead and sell your house and get the 5.6% interest rate, because you'll never see 3 again. Because what people don't know is COVID brought about 2 and 3%. So we're not getting COVID again, thank God. But so that's not going to go back to that. Now remember, it was 7.9 3-4 months ago. Now the interest rate, today the interest rate was 5.67 for a FHA and 5.42 for a conventional. So right now it's been a seller's market for 2.5 years. Now it's flipping. The inventory's going up, and now it's becoming a buyer's market. So if you want to buy, this is your time. If you're a seller, what you don't want to do is you don't want to dream back to when there was bidding wars on houses, because there's not going to be a bidding war on your house now. So you want to get your house ready, market ready, paint it, do whatever you need to do to get the best bang for your buck, and put your house on the market. And while your house is on the market, you're looking for another house. If you happen to find a house before your house sells, you just do what's called a contingency. And a contingency is, I'm going to buy your house only if mine sell. If mine doesn't sell, then I can't buy your house. So any way that you dream it up, it's between you and them to make it like that. Somebody could say, oh, well, I'm going to give you this amount of time where I'm going to let you be locked in, and I'm not going to take any suitors. Or they can say, well, I'm going to be taking suitors, just so you know. And then that's what you agree on. Because remember, everything is negotiable. When you're selling your house, the best thing to do for a seller in this market, because everybody does like the shiny new, clean your house up, unclutter. Make me walk in your house and be able to see me and my family living in it. I don't want to see your kids' pictures. I don't want to see them. I don't want to know what books you like to read. And I don't want a pink kitchen. So if you neutralize the house and take everything out, and even if you have to put it in a garage or storage or whatever, you want to make the house just as basic as you can, so the person walking in can walk right in. When it comes to selling a house, here's how a house sells. If the kitchen sink has a window above it, the woman picks the house, she picks it by the kitchen. And if she's looking out, loading the dishwasher or doing the dishes, she can look out that window and dream about anything she wants to do. That's how a house sells. If you got a house where the kitchen window opens up to a brick wall or a garage, the house is going to be on the market for a long time. Another thing is, just like the Harrisburg thing, if you live in a place where everything new is coming up and there's a dog park, and a bike trail and all those things, that's the sooner your house will sell. But you have to have your house market ready, and you have to be flexible on the list price. Remember, when you get with your agent, I'm your agent. I'm going to pull up 3 comparables. I'm going to pull up 3 comparable houses that have the same number of rooms as yours. I'm going to try to get them as close as I can to your house within a 1-mile radius of your house, and that's only been on the market for 35 days. Anything outside of that, it's not a comp of your house. It's old and it doesn't matter. So when I give you, because you're going to set the price that you're going to sell this house at, but I'm going to feed you the information. I'm going to give you the comparable houses. These houses sold for this. These houses are currently listed for this. What you want to list your house at, Miss Eva? And you pick the price. Now, I always say this. Pick a price that you really want to sell your house at. Don't say, well, I'm going to list it for $10,000 more than I really want. Your house will be sitting there and it'll be stale, and then people will start passing your house up. So you want to get in the fine window of just what you want for that house, and you want to list it right at that amount, because the name of the game is to sell fast, not let it sit on the market and get stale, because more things can happen to your house while you're sitting on the market, and then people are passing you by, and then now you're just stuck with the house. So that's for the selling part. And don't be afraid. Like, if you don't have to sell your house and you just want to get your feet wet and see what it is out there, that's fine. But if you really have to sell your house, just know, like, get the best, shop your interest rate. The best people to go to for a loan, when you're going to look for a house for a pre-approval, is going to be a bank or a credit union that you already have a relationship with. That's the easiest way to go. So when you go out to buy your house, you want to go talk to a person at your credit union or your bank where your money is, and then as your backup plan, you want to talk to a mortgage broker. And a mortgage lender and broker work together. So go the realty that if you're at Caldwell Banker, if that's where your agent's through, they have a mortgage lender right there. You use the mortgage lender and you compare shop. And if the mortgage lender can't give you a number as good as your bank, then you get the pre-approval from your bank with a better number, but you still get the mortgage lender at Caldwell Banker to give you one too. So if something falls through with the first one, you got a backup one and you don't lose the offer on the house. Yeah, that makes sense. Any questions about that part for sellers? All right, so now when you think about a seller selling their house, the best option for a seller is really the contingency part. You want to do the contingency so that you're always safe to have your house when you go to sell your house, unless you have a alternate plan where you decide. Some people go rent. They sell their house. They're not sure what they're going to buy, so they go rent on a short-term lease, like a 6-month lease on an apartment or townhouse, until they go buy their new house. But other than that, you always want to have your realtor put a contingency deal in the paperwork. Let me think what else I have here. Oh yeah, so when you start to interview your realtor and you're making that decision, what you want to do is you want to really stay clear of anybody at new construction that works for the new construction office. Because again, back to those upgrades and things that you got to negotiate, you just want to make sure you got your own realtor. And that would be the most important part. All right, so now let's talk about making an offer on the house. So when you find the house, what you want to do is you want to have your realtor actually pull up the market conditions first, the comparables, because you want to be in the know too. You don't just like put an offer in on a house. The things that you want to take into consideration is how long the house has been on the market, and you want your realtor to have I'll tell you this, the majority of realtors, it's not a competition between us. Because at the end of the day, some people make it like that. But I speak from my experience. I want to get the deal done. I don't want to go back and forth with the other realtor. I don't dislike her. It's better to have a amicable relationship and rapport so we can both, because we're working toward the same goal. We want to get the deal done. So when I start out, I already know Miss Eva's situation. So when I talk to the other realtor of the house that Miss Eva wants to buy, I'm just going to ask general questions, and it's not like doing anything against the law or the procedure. It's just that, hey, so when do these people need to move? What's their situation? Are they moving out of state for a job, or are they just moving down the street? So once you get that information, you want to give it to Miss Eva because you want to know how she's going to present her offer. And if I say to her, these people have to go. They took a job and they got a deadline to be moved, and by this number of days and blah, blah, blah. Now we can play around with the price. And the only thing about the price is you never want to lowball somebody where they insult you, where you insult them. So if a house is $400,000 and it's not like a new construction or corporation owned, if it's just a owner owning the house, and you come in and you want to put your offer in, you don't want to say, oh yeah, I'll give you $350,000, because they don't have to respond to the offer. And if you really like that house, now you're out. So what you want to take into consideration first is the market value, and you'll have that. And then you want to take into consideration the details of the market around the house, and then also their personal situation. And then you can at least give them a decent number, and then you can go back and forth. Nobody gets insulted. You just negotiate back and forth until you get to a middle ground that you both can agree on. And then you give them the earnest money and the due diligence money. And then that's it. So the closing costs are going to be the earnest money, the due diligence money, the inspection money, and the appraisal. That's all beforehand. When you get to the table, when you get to the closing table, you're going to know, it used to be called a HUD 1, but it's a closing sheet now. I'm going to give Miss Eva a closing cost sheet way before the deal even goes through, so she can know what she's going to be putting out. Taxes and things vary, they change, but you'll get updated. In the 2 days before the closing, you'll get what's called the closing sheet, and what you end up paying for are these things: the loan origination fees, the surveys and inspections are already paid for. You're going to pay a prorated amount of mortgage insurance, and you're going to pay a prorated amount of hazard insurance, a prorated amount of taxes, and then you'll be assessed to pay the title insurance, the notary and the escrow fees, and the recording fees and the stamps. Those are all the things that the institution charges that you're getting the loan from. And those will all be prorated according to what time, what month, and what day you're moving into the house and you're going to take ownership. For the buyer, you're going to have the inspection. We're going to decide what I'm going to fix, what you'll accept, what we'll do. Once we get past those negotiations, you're going to have the opportunity to do what's called a final walkthrough. So me and Miss Eva are going to go over there 24 hours before. We're going to make sure the house didn't flood or nothing while the time passed. And we're going to make sure everything's intact before we go to the closing table, because once she accepts the keys, it's her house. As far as the The one thing, the only thing that I've ever really seen stop somebody from buying a house is if when the mortgage lender does a title search and the owner of the home has liens on their house that they owe and they can't afford to pay them. That's the only time. And then at that point, what that's called a breach. Now we're going to go back to the due diligence money. Miss Eva's going to get it all back now because they breached the contract. See, if Miss Eva walked away from the house, she can take that earnest money, but she don't get that due diligence back. But if the seller is in breach of the contract that they signed, because remember on the contract it says free and clear of all liens. So if they don't disclose that or they don't know, too bad, she gets all the money back. And she gets damages. So that means that the owner of the house that can't sell his house to Miss Eva, he's going to have to give her back. They'll have a mediator. He's going to have to give her back the inspection money, the appraisal money, because he made it not possible for her to buy the house. So that's breach. But if you know before the closing date and you can just pay it, then good. But if you don't have the money, you know what I mean? Because the title search is going to come in probably like about a week or two before the closing. Yeah. A love letter. Oh yeah. So if you say, so perfect example. So if you looking for a house and you look at things like that, they got a Cowboys flag in the house, right? So when it's time people putting these bids on, you want to do that. It's really called a love letter. You want to write it, and you know your realtor is going to say it's to your own discretion. It might help, it might not. And it just depends. So if you write the love letter, hey, so this is my family lives in this area, you know, historically we've been here and I really want to buy your house, and then my wife is having a baby, and I know the Cowboys ain't never gonna win again, but I'm a fan anyway. Sorry, I had to throw that one in there. So yeah, and then you pull on their heartstrings and they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna accept his bid and sell the house to him. Yeah. What other questions you got? USDA. Yep, then they will. And so with everything, the key really to everything is just doing the research on it and having your realtor do the research, because everything has so many stipulations. And you just never want to be caught up in a situation where you can't come through on what you agreed to. That's the main thing. But there's a lot of areas that agriculturally they give those. Mooresville, Hickory, Winston-Salem. So you notice none in Charlotte, right? Because you know what Charlotte is. Charlotte's too up and coming, and there's no more trees. They're knocking down all the trees. When I drive past every day from where I live, the trees are gone. So they don't want nobody to build out, because a lot of the places in Charlotte are corporate owned. Oh yeah, Catawba. Yep. Mooresville, Hickory, Winston-Salem. Some in Iredell. Not a lot in Iredell, but some. And it's almost like you want the government to come in and like just say stop, like, and cap it off and say the corporate owned houses, you can have this many. but not this many. But it's, everything is so much in turmoil now. But that's what as people, because now what happens is the people like us that want to buy a second home for to rent out and things like that, you can't afford to, because the corporate owned ones, they just come in and throw the money, and then they just flip all these houses, and you're like, wow, as a private citizen and landlord, I can't even get a property. So that's tough. Mhm. Right. So now what you end up with, I don't know if anybody heard, there's a commercial, and it says, it's real upbeat, and the lady is saying, and if you don't have what it takes to buy a home now, no worries, you can just rent to own, and you can put, um all, she says, this amount of money that you put down, and then I noticed she says, and for only, how does she say it a month? She says for only $2,500 a month, you can rent to own. So in a rent to own situation, this is who the benefactor, the person who benefits the most, is me as the owner. And I'll tell you why. Because if you do a rent to own, right, you're going to say, I don't have the credit worthiness to buy a house, so I'm going to rent to own your house off of you, Jody. And I'm going to say, oh, good. So we're going to sign this lease where you're going to give me $5,000 down, and you're going to sign a year lease. And in that year's time, you're going to be getting your credit together. And then you're going to be paying me an exuberant amount of rent for a rent to own every month. And then at the end, you can go ahead and just buy my house. Well, let's think about that. You're paying me extra every month to rent to own my house. And then what if something happens? What if you don't get credit worthy? What if you don't get your credit together and you can't buy my house at the end of the lease? Guess what I get to do? Keep all your money that you paid, because you're not going to get the money back. So this is what I suggest all the time. Instead of doing a rent to own with somebody, just fix your credit while you're renting an apartment and go buy your own house. A rent to own only benefits the person who owns the property. It doesn't benefit the person in any way. So any credit questions? Any questions before we end? Okay. Yeah, so when you look at, I think that the takeaway would be, in this climate, always watch the interest rate. And this is another thing too, I always say, over my lifetime, when I was 20 and 30 years old, it sounded really good to me if somebody did a commercial and said, no money down. Nothing's for free in life. And all no money down means is, I'm going to give you an outrageous interest rate. That's really all that means. Even with a car, right? Anybody can go get a car. They'll give you a car. I hear them on the radio. But you're going to, if you, and I hear people say, well, I don't feel like fixing my credit. I got bad credit, but I'm going to, because if you go get the car, you're going to get it, and you might need it. You might have to get that car to go to work. So bad credit, you're going to pay the higher interest rate, right? Not with a house. Don't do it. Because there is no such thing as no money down when you go to buy a house. Zero money down. That's not true. You're going to have to pay the closing costs. Nobody's going to pay it for you. And when you have not good credit, you're going to pay a higher interest rate. So what you want to do is you just want to be disciplined. You want to take the time, get credit worthy, so you can go in there and get that good interest rate when you go to buy your house. There's going to be houses forever. There's no hurry. So you just want to watch the interest rate. You want to watch what the Fed does, and then you want to watch what's around you, what's going on around you, how many trees they cutting down, how many houses they're putting up, and that's how you decide where you want to actually be. But when you first start out that journey, that home buying journey, it may get tough at times. But you just remember, you might not be able to buy your dream home. You just buy your right now house. Because when you buy your right now house and you get ready to sell it, there's going to be somebody looking for their right now house. And then that's going to propel you to buy your dream home. People start out really big-eyed, like, ooh, this is not HGTV. It doesn't work like that. You buy what you can afford, and sometimes we can only afford a small house. You ever see, this is bad, but I'm going to say it. You ever see somebody that's really, really large and they're in like a car that they got to struggle to get out of? That's because that person could only afford that much car. So that's the same thing. Don't be shy. You can only afford that much house. But you buy that house, you build the equity, because the equity starts after 3 years of owning a house. So you use it as a tool, not just a house. So you buy the house, you build the equity, and then you go get the house the size that you want, and you sell that house to somebody who needs a small house. The starter home. There you go. That's it. Sound good? Any questions before we go? We good, yep.
We just want to thank everyone for coming. Pastor had to leave, had another obligation, but we want to thank Sister Jody Walls. Let's give her a hand for her professionalism and how she just conducted herself and gave us more knowledge of how to sell and buy a home. We just thank God for her. And we just want to close in a word of prayer. Father God, we just thank you for the day allowing us to come to your house. We thank you for the knowledge we gained being here with Sister Jody. We pray that you will continue to bless her, God. Bless our pastor as he travel and give us traveling mercy. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen.
Amen.